We continue our business and we call for part of the deliverance from the Assembly Trustees. John, you're here again, and welcome.
Here again. Moderator, for those of you who can remember as far back as Saturday, you will know that I said that every element of the Trustees' report was interlinked, from our commitment to the strengthening of local ministry, to the opening of the Seeds for Growth Fund, from the creation of an integrated training programme to the establishment of a single faith action team. Each is a part of a strategic approach to support the development of the whole life of our church. The sections of deliverance that we are considering today are a key element in the delivery of an effective and efficient structure for the governance and delivery of our work. Work streams have already been brought together in a single faith action programme team, and now we want to move towards a single integrated policy, strategy and governance group. For the moment, it has a working title of an active faith leadership team, which would include, this time around, representatives of the new presbyteries, so that there was an active dialogue between what is happening from the centre and what is happening in our presbyteries. The active faith leadership team, which would include representatives of the new presbyteries, would report to this General Assembly. How their report would be structured will be under 4 headings: mission, people and training, public life and global justice, and resource and presence. Exactly how they will report is still to be considered. That, together with the detail of how ecumenical relations and the theological forum will interact with the Faith Action Programme, bringing all of our expertise together in the one place. I said on Saturday that this signals the end of church dominated by endless committee meetings and the beginning of a church freed to get on with engaging in the mission of God. I said on Saturday, don't get hung up about the titles allocated to these groups, and don't get anxious right now about how these will relate to this assembly. Instead, get excited about the idea of a church which is lighter on its feet and is more focused on how it communicates the gospel and engages with the missing generations. This is just another step on the journey towards a leaner and fitter structure. What Anne Nelson and her D10 group have done is create the atmosphere in which the forums and committees of the church are willing to work with one another in a strategic planning team, which will report to the Assembly Trustees later this year, and who, in turn, will bring the detail on how all of this will work to next year's General Assembly. They will detail how the reporting will happen and how we continue to develop the integrated strategic programme that is needed to rebuild and reform our beloved church. Moderator, I've already moved this section of deliverance, but today we turn to its approval.
Thank you, Convener. I've got 2 questions and somebody else wanting to speak. Derek Browning, number 2, and would Alex Shuttleworth, number 343, please stand by to speak.
Moderator Browning 002, I'm grateful for the convener's clarification and his remarks there. My question was about to whom will these bodies be accountable? Obviously, the General Assembly. And it was really to ask whether the new group would be a standing committee of the General Assembly, and also in particular would the subgroups within be reporting independently of that group to the General Assembly or underneath one convener. Thank you, Moderator.
Do you want to answer that, John?
Yeah, I think those of you who are familiar with General Assemblies of the past will remember that even some of our big councils had multiple working groups within them. And there was an overall report which gave the high-level strategy, policy and direction. But within even those reports, there would be independent headings. And we would envisage something like that going forward. But there would be 4, we think, we call them at the moment vice conveners, but that, you know, the Assembly next year will decide. But 4 people who will be responsible for each of these major headings and who would be in a position to contribute to the report to the General Assembly so that there was proper governance over the whole.
Thank you. Alex Shuttleworth, and would Ian Major please stand by number 257.
Oh, there we go. Alex Shuttleworth, 343. I was distressed to hear the convener saying that this would be his last assembly. I consoled myself with the fact that he's already had more farewell performances than Frank Sinatra, so that's a good thing. But I want to say something to him and then ask a question on it. I want to say that I think now as never before the centre has to do only that which the local cannot, and provide that for which local mission of the Church truly calls. And I know he'll agree with that because he said those words on Saturday. So I'm pretty sure he agrees with that. I wonder if there's a mechanism that he can influence and perhaps formalize that every agenda of all boards and committees should have on it somewhere that question. Is what we are doing here enabling the local presbyteries to do more and allowing us to let go of those things which we've had traditionally? We have at every Kirk session meeting, and I'm sure it's a common practice now, that safeguarding will be discussed. Now, that discussion may be nothing to report, but at least it's there, at least it keeps it before our minds and concentrates our thoughts on it. So without making a formal proposition, do you think, does the convener think that's a sensible idea, and could he put it into action before he finally hangs up his trilby or whatever it is he performs in? Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Convener?
Can I invite the Chief Officer to speak to this one?
Yes, Alec, I think that's something we can certainly work on. We have quite a few things on the agendas to make a point about what we're trying to do at the meetings, and I think that'd be an excellent thing to put as a banner up there.
Thank you. Ian, would you like to speak?
Moderator Ian Meyer, number 257. I stand here today not knowing, like many in this room, what the future holds for me as a minister. Our Presbytery mission plan has not been finalised, nor has there been a draft given. And I'm concerned that we're racing forward with change before we've even caught our breath. For years, the church has kicked change into long grass. We've hid behind acts, we've hid behind tradition, and we have looked, in my view, at the church through rose-tinted glasses far too often. Since the General Assembly voted in favour of the Radical Action Plan, it seems to me that we are now accepting change after change coming from the Assembly trustees without stopping to draw breath. It was not that long ago that the Assembly voted to form Faith Impact and Faith Nurture. And before these forums even really learnt to walk, and certainly before they have learnt to run, we are once again getting rid of things and proposing changes. It seems as if we're getting rid of things one year only to turn the corner of life to create new ones, albeit with new and different names. The D10 report itself states the need to give new groups time and also time to review, something which they seem to ignore themselves, I fear. I am all for change, please don't get me wrong. I entered ministry as we launched into this Radical Action Plan, but we need to do change well. and not change for the sake of doing something or anything at all. The report also states the need for better communication, yet many of our congregations are in a period of great uncertainty, due often at times to the lack of clear communication at all levels of church life, including the national church. We need to be better at communicating. We also need to get better at implementing change. And I'm sure the convener will say that part of us getting better at change is this report and this plan. But is it? Moderator, I believe asking us once again to implement changes such as being asked by the D10 report at a time while many of us are still waiting for the last seeds of change, which we were instructed to plant, cultivate and watch bloom, is not the right thing to do, and is only going to add unnecessary worries across the board of the church. Instead of kicking change into long grass, I fear we're trying to score the elusive drop goal while aiming for touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Convener?
Clearly, I'm going to disagree with that. I think that change is the only constant. And even within the proposals that are before you today for the development of a more integrated policy and governance group over the work we are trying to do centrally, you will, if you've read it closely, notice that we're not even saying that this should be a permanent change, but that this is something that will grow, evolve, develop, change again over the next 3 to 5 years as the different elements of change that are going on across the church finally come together. And some of you may have noted that I wrote a little piece in Life and Work about where we are as a church. And we're nervous, we're fearful, moderator, as you spoke about on Sunday in your sermon, fearful about what lies ahead. And it has generated in some people that sense that belonged to the children of Israel when they were on their flight out of Egypt, that somehow they began to think that perhaps it was better back there. But I can tell you it wasn't better back there. We've singularly failed to be able to develop the kind of strategic approach to our church life and spending. And so I believe, as strongly as I ever have, that we are on the cusp of something new, something I haven't seen in my time in ministry or in this General Assembly, and that we need to follow our fear here, face it, and make the changes that are required, because the answer isn't back there, either in the forums or in the councils or in something else we did in the past. The answer is before us. I hope it doesn't take us 40 years in the wilderness to get there.
Thank you, Convener. I noticed that Grant Barclay wanted to speak, but his name has disappeared. You no longer want to, Grant. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We move then to the deliverance, and we're dealing with 11 through to 14. 11. $12. 13. 14. 'Sandy?
Thank you, Moderator. Sandy Horsburgh, 573, Convener of Ecumenical Relations. The Ecumenical Relations Committee exists to serve the whole Church, supporting and resourcing congregations, encouraging and facilitating ecumenical work at presbytery level, and representing the whole Church in conversations and joint work with our partner churches and in the ecumenical instruments. The committee stands ready to work with every part of the Church, as we have always done, not least but not exclusively in the delivery of the Faith Action Plan. The Assembly Trustees' report tells of the wide consultation which preceded the publication of the report of the D10 group. I'm sorry that this consultation did not extend to the Ecumenical Relations Committee, which was given 2 days to turn around a response to a 30-page draft report. The D10 draft contained much that was about us without actually having talked with us. Had there been consultation, many of the misperceptions could have been easily remedied. Of course, we submitted a response, and it ran to 11 pages. I have to say that throughout those frantic 48 hours, Anne Nelson, the convener of the D10 group, went above and beyond to help make sure that our response was received, and I would like to record my thanks to you, Anne, for all your assistance. I welcome the Assembly Trustees' determination that we should not work in silos and that there should be cooperation and collaboration across the Church. I particularly welcome the inclusion of ecumenical relations in the proposed strategic planning team, which the convener mentioned a moment ago. As we go forward, we trust that the trustees themselves will more fully engage with the committee on a regular and ongoing basis. The committee would warmly welcome that. As the trustees continue to work on the task mandated in Deliverance 14, do I detect a D14 group in the offing? But as they work on that in relation with the ER committee, could I ask them, if structural changes are to be made, that whatever problem they are supposed to solve should be identified? I would contend that ER, largely because of the skills, dedication and hard work of our peerless ecumenical officer, John McPake, has delivered very significantly for the whole Church in a wide range of areas, not least in the delivery of the St. Margaret Declaration, which we agreed on Monday. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you, Sandy. Do you wish to speak to that, convener? No. Happy with that. 14, as in print. And the deliverance as a whole. John, I wonder if I might say a few words to you. John, for the sheer capacity to be able to hold so many things together, we would want to commend you. I don't think, John, that you could possibly ever have thought that when you took over in this capacity that you were going to have to face many of the issues that you've had to face. I think you knew they were considerable, but not after what COVID has done to us. So you've applied your mind and you brought together good minds to be able to address the current situation and try to drive the Church into a place that is good and that has potential for growth. And for that, we're very grateful to you, and we're very grateful to the trustees and to everybody who has so ably supported you. You finish now as chair of the trustees, but you've earned a good rest. But I would imagine, John, that's not in your character to let yourself lie down and no longer work for the Church. However, we wait with interest for what that might hold later on. But at this moment in time, we would like to record our sincere gratitude and thanks for all that you've done, especially in the last 2 years for the Church. Thank you.